And our next speaker needs only a little bit of introduction because you've already seen her at the presentations. In fact, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce her as her clinician. Andrea and I met on New Year's Eve, 31st of December 2015. She'll tell you the story. You don't want me to tell it. So I'd like to introduce you to Andrea Sheardown. Andrea's talk is entitled "The Patient Perspective, the Climb Continues."
Okay. Many of you here today have heard, or may have heard or seen my name before. For those that haven't, I'm Andrea Sheardown from Sandbach in Cheshire. I would like to point out at this stage that I will be reading from a script as I'm extremely nervous and would drone on forever without it, which my husband can vouch for. At the end of 2015, I was diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma and given a prognosis of just weeks to live. I was 44 at the time, an active mum of 3 and following a healthy lifestyle. Before I tell you my story, I just want to thank Helen and her AMMF team and all the amazing medical minds here today that continue to dedicate your time and efforts into finding new treatments for cholangiocarcinoma. You are all my heroes. October 2015, I was sat in a hospital bed when a nurse approached me and dropped her file on the floor, scattering Macmillan cancer cards everywhere. As she picked them up, I asked her, "Have you come here to tell me something?" She replied, "Hasn't anybody told you?" I saw tears in her eyes as she turned and hurried out of the room. It was that moment I knew I had cancer. I'd spent the previous 8 weeks toing and froing from the doctors and A&E with severe pains in my ribcage. No one seemed concerned about my symptoms. I thought I was going mad, but I knew my own body and that something was seriously wrong. Eventually, a locum doctor could see the pain and discomfort I was in and admitted me to hospital for suspected gallstones. After a week of blood tests and scans, of which my bloods were always perfect and still are, I was preparing myself for bad news, but didn't expect it to be delivered in the way it was. That evening, my husband and I were taken into a side room and told the devastating news that I had cancer in advanced stages, that nothing could be done, and to go home and put my life in order. How could I possibly have to be going home to tell my then 4, 13 and 15-year-olds that their mum wasn't going to see them grow up? It didn't feel real. We spent the next week in our favourite place by the sea gathering our thoughts. As daunting as our world had just become, we were not prepared to accept the prognosis given. I knew we needed to fight for a second opinion. After frantically trying to research cholangiocarcinoma on the internet and seeing the dismal survival statistics available, we knew we needed to seek specialist help and fast. This led us to the inspiring liver surgical team at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, who agreed to take a risk on me. It's important to get across how critical these early days in diagnosis really are, and the importance of at a local hospital level, recognising when they should involve a more specialist team from the outset. I believe this in itself would help to save more lives. The QE gave us a lifeline in the chance of surgery. The operation took place on the 18th of November 2015, where they removed a tumour the size of a small pineapple. And I was told that without that surgery at that stage, I really wouldn't have made it. I was in hospital for nearly 3 weeks, and with no set treatment pathway for when I left, I knew my next battle was about to start. It was while I was in hospital that my dad, through frantic research, found the AMMF charity. He spoke at length to Helen Mormont, who gave us lots of useful information. So then, having been refused a follow-up course of chemotherapy at the QE, and on with more information from the AMMF, we sought another second opinion from Professor Valley at the Christie Hospital, another one of my heroes. And from his advice, I went on to have a 6-month course of capecitabine. The following 6 months were very tough. The treatment left me feeling ill and weak, and Professor Valley realised early on just how stubborn I was, and that I wasn't going to miss any of my cycles of treatment, even when it hospitalised me on a few occasions. During my treatment, I had to stay positive with my diagnosis, but seeing the devastating impact it was having on my family, it was soul-destroying. Our youngest, age 4, was too young to understand, but the older two children knew there was something seriously wrong. In particular, our daughter, aged 15, found it all too much to cope with and ended up in a very dark place, needing outside support. It was hard enough dealing with the diagnosis myself, but to see the pain my children and husband were going through was a weight very heavy to bear. I knew then that I had to stand up, be strong, and set an example to everyone around me. Just because I had been dealt a bad hand, I needed to show them that I could go on and fight this and make a difference too. I felt I'd been given a second chance at life, and I wanted to set an example to my family and friends and embark on giving back, so my desire to fundraise for the AMMF began. I'd often likened my journey to the ups and downs of climbing a mountain, so following my chemotherapy, it seemed apt to try the real thing. Anyone that knew me knew how hard that would be, as I have a huge fear of heights. November 2016, 3 months after finishing the chemotherapy, with my family in tow, I climbed Mount Snowdon, followed quickly by Scafell Pike and Ben Nevis, completing the 3 peaks in the depths of winter. After successfully completing this challenge, with the help of family and friends, I took on more fundraising challenges and organised numerous local events. I even roped in the help of some local dads, including my poor husband, and convinced them to do the full Monty in the name of charity. We started to become known locally as Andrea's AMMF Army, and were inspired to take our fundraising to the next level. February 2018, just 18 months after finishing my treatment, 12 of us, including our nearly 15-year-old son, Sam, took on the world's largest freestanding mountain, Kilimanjaro, at 19,341 feet high. This epic challenge saw my son to get to 15,000 feet before he was forced to turn back due to altitude sickness. But in this very emotional moment, he whispered to me, "Mum, you must carry on and get to the top." This spurred me on, and although it was all very traumatic, I did exactly that and got to the summit. 2019, 18 of us, including my then 17-year-old daughter Amelia, cycled 500 kilometres from Vietnam to Cambodia. Again, we hadn't done any serious cycling before, but we determined to do it and did. February 2020, just before lockdown, my then 17-year-old son, Sam, not put off from Kilimanjaro, joined my husband, my sister, and 11 of her friends to climb to Everest Base Camp. My son Sam was like a mountain goat this time and had no trouble with the altitude. I took this AMMF charity Hope Bear mascot with me to base camp, not knowing it was hiding a secret. Inside the sleeping bag was a handmade ring with 3 diamonds representing each of our children, separated by purple amethyst gemstones, symbolising hope and the healing, and aptly AMMF's colours too. My husband presented this to me at base camp, having had it blessed by local monks. It was a moment that I will never forget. But not forgetting our youngest child, Ben, he has also been involved in our challenges, and since the age of 5, he's climbed Snowdon multiple times, and more recently climbed Ben Nevis. So it really has been a family fundraising affair. And my husband sat over there on table 11. You are my rock and my unsung hero. Our fundraising activities have appeared in local, national and international newspapers, reaching Argentina, Mexico, Brazil, Spain and Italy, to name a few. We have also featured on local and national radio stations and even had a BBC film crew spend time with us filming about my cancer journey, which aired on BBC One. All of this helps to raise the profile of cholangiocarcinoma and the AMMF charity. People affected by cholangiocarcinoma have also reached out to me from all corners of the globe, wanting to know how I'm still here and asking for advice. Although I can't change their outcomes, I like to think that I can give them hope and support and point them in the directions of others that can. COVID has had a devastating impact on all charities, with smaller charities like the AMMF impacted more. It did mean that my planned big challenge for 2021 had to be postponed, but I didn't let it put me off, and I tried to be creative during lockdown with some virtual fundraising challenges instead, including running 10K every day for 7 days in the coldest week of winter to simulate the distance of Everest Base Camp. I'm excited to say that everything is back on track for my biggest Andrea's AMMF group challenge to date. Next February, 26 of us, including my daughter, will cycle 1,000 kilometres from Bangkok to Phuket in just 9 days. Thailand has always been somewhere I have wanted to do a challenge because of its high incidence of cholangiocarcinoma. I'm also hoping to meet with the amazing Professor Narong whilst out there. Everyone dealt with this devastating cancer, cholangiocarcinoma, is looking for hope, wanting to hear about somebody else that has survived against the odds. That person for me is Beryl Jones, who some of you may have already heard of. She is 75 and has been cancer-free for over 14 years, and yes, she is another one of my heroes. 2 weeks ago, she joined me on one of my crazy fundraising challenges, walking across 580-degree centigrade hot coals in the name of the AMMF charity. We achieved this amazing feat together with our families, and we raised £6,500 just from this challenge on the night. My fundraising total is steadily increasing, and we hope to pass the 100k mark in the very near future. I was once asked what my advice would be to people recently diagnosed with cholangiocarcinoma, and my reply was, number one, do not be afraid to question everything. Number two, if you are not happy with the diagnosis, push for a second or third opinion from a cholangiocarcinoma specialist, as time is of the essence in those early days. And third, never give up. You are not alone, and never be scared to ask for help. There are some amazing forums with a wealth of experience on them, including, of course, the AMMF charity, so contact them straight away. As a cancer survivor, I have embraced my second chance at life, although I may never know why I was dealt such a bad hand, and the fear of reoccurrence is always in the back of my mind 365 days of the year. I have realised that life doesn't have to be over following a cancer diagnosis. I have learned that every day is a gift and a blessing, and that pushing boundaries that you never thought possible really can lead you on to some amazing life adventures that you might have never taken. These life adventures help me and my family keep firmly focused on the future instead of worrying about the what-ifs. Again, I would like to say thank you to all the amazing medical professionals and scientists at this conference. I owe my life to you and the fantastic team of surgeons and specialist nurses that were involved in my care. But my final thanks goes to Helen Mormont from the AMMF. You are a very special lady, and you should be immensely proud of what you have and continue to achieve for both patients and families affected by this devastating cancer. My family and I will be indebted to your wonderful charity forever. I would like to leave you with my favourite memories from my Everest base camp trip, and just to say thank you to all my fellow cholangio warriors out there. Keep fighting and never give up hope.
just by some final words, some comments that are appearing on the chat you need to be aware of. Debbie Leonard, you're amazing. I've encouraged my patients to get second opinions. Jill Andrews, you're truly amazing. And Echo QE Birmingham are also my heroes. Dr. Dan Lagenbacher, thank you, Andrea. You're amazing. Javier Perez, great. Thanks for your advice.